No one except those on board could know his destination in advance.
This mission, the president wanted to be completely secret.
I think probably in the end there was probably maybe 5 of us that had a really good idea of what was going to happen.
Even air traffic control had to be kept in the dark. If any hint of the mission slipped out, the operation would be scrubbed.
How do I execute a non-stop covert mission without alerting anybody of what we were doing? How do you make the president disappear for a few days?
The president, the most closely watched man on Earth, needed to vanish for 48 hours. To establish a cover story, the trip started at his ranch in Texas. The first family had gathered for Thanksgiving, but the president would not be there for dinner.
Very few people in Crawford at the ranch knew that I'd be leaving. It was very much a cloak and dagger operation.
Passenger 1 boarded secretly in Waco, Texas, but the jet couldn't fly non-stop to Iraq without refueling. To keep the trip as swift and secret as possible, the president's plane touched down outside Washington at Andrews and pulled into the hangar. Inside, the second presidential plane was standing by, fueled up for immediate departure.
We did everything inside the hangar because we had to worry about the tower watching us or anybody outside.
You know, everyone's blood pressure was up. It was very interesting, the kind of the choreography inside the hangar when we left. The president gets off, he's got his polo shirt on, he's got a baseball cap on. He walks off one airplane, walks on another airplane.
Everyone, all the maintenance guys, recognized it was the president as well as our cops inside. They all knew, oh my God, it's the president. They knew at that point something was going on.
Minutes after arrival, the president was headed back into the air. But as far as the rest of the world knew, the presidential plane never took off.
When we left here, we used a different call sign, so we weren't Air Force One.
We filed a flight plan for a Gulfstream type of aircraft, okay? So I changed the identity of our airplane. We changed the modes, the codes, and everything associated with the movement of an airplane. So once it got airborne, all the center would see is that there's an airplane. They didn't know it was a 747.
6 hours out, all systems go. A bogus Gulfstream jet heads east. But in the skies over England, a chance encounter almost blows the plane's cover.
We were going over London, England, and another pilot had gone by and seen the airplane and asked if it was Air Force One, and the controller dutifully said, no, sir, it's a Gulfstream type aircraft. Well, to say that we all missed a heartbeat is an understatement, because all we needed was that civilian pilot to say, sir, that's not a Gulfstream aircraft, that's a 747, it's blue and white, it sure looks like Air Force One. That could have been a reason to terminate the operation.
Colonel Tillman's plane was not the only 747 pretending to be a Gulfstream that day. The twin presidential backup plane flew close behind.
We've got to get a second airplane close because we know we can get the president into Baghdad, but if, God forbid, something were to happen to the airplane, we have to get him out of there now. So we needed to get a second airplane within striking distance of reaching him when it is time for him to leave.
1 hour before the president's plane was scheduled to arrive in Baghdad,
you'll need to verify the 1,000.
its identical twin made an unofficial and unannounced landing, not in Iraq, but in a country whose identity is still top secret.
So eventually we get 2 or 3 miles out on final, and we landed unannounced when they figure out, hey, this isn't a Gulfstream, this is a lot bigger airplane. And oh, by the way, it also says United States of America on it. So from a security standpoint, we raised a lot of eyebrows.
Commander of the backup plane, Colonel Scott Turner, couldn't reveal why he'd come. He had to stall the local authorities until the president was headed home.
The trick was to talk them into servicing the airplane while we were sorting out the details. They could have really have hauled us all off under some international law, and we'd still be in prison.
Meanwhile, the primary plane had entered the twilight skies over war-torn Iraq. Timing was now critical.
About an hour out, you can start seeing the seriousness of people's mindsets changing.
You're 2 o'clock and about 3.5 miles.
Tillman's plan was to descend at dusk and land under cover of darkness.
I remember us going completely black. All lights shut down, inside, outside, closing the shades.
It was a very tense time. Number one, just operating the aircraft in that regime. Number two, operating it when you think somebody might shoot at you at any minute.
We got over Baghdad, and Tillman begins a circle. And it was interesting to see Baghdad silhouetted on the sunset, because he wanted to time it. By the time we circled in and landed, it was dark.
He came through those clouds, and he yanked that thing up, and we did a few spirals. And when he rolled out on that baby, the runway was right in front of us. He was on speed. Flaps were set. The gear was down.
The President's 747 dropped out of the sky without warning and touched down in the middle of a war zone.
The folks on the ground said they didn't know who it was until actually the plane actually came up right up next to them, and they could see, just in some of the moonlight, they could see the United States of America on the side.
It was a very dramatic moment.
For the next 2 hours, while the President met with the troops, the Air Force One crew sweated out preparations for the return trip, every passing minute turning the giant plane into a potential target on the tarmac.
I was positive I could get him in there. The concern was while I was on the ground there, if somebody knew that he was there, then they would start bringing firepower into the Baghdad airport.
I was talking to Colonel Tillman, and he said, this is where it begins. They know we're here now.
Unbelievable. Shocking.
Something big out there. Big.